Okay, all right. So I prepared a few questions I wanted to ask Sonia just to have some background of her. And then in the meantime, if anyone has any questions, like participants, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put in the chat. I prepared 5 questions to ask Sonia just to get some baseline like background on who she is and her experiences. And yeah, so okay, so my first question for Sonia is, what is business and strategy development, and like what is corporate financial planning analysis? Like these are all like really elusive terms for all of us, I think. So maybe can you like expand on what these mean and like what you do around these?
Absolutely. They were elusive for me when I wasn't working as well. But first of all, I just want to say thanks for having me. It's so cool to see so many of you from around the world. I wish I had had opportunities like this when I was in high school or even college, but it's nice what we can do with Zoom now. So to your first question, what are the jobs that I've had before? So the probably easiest one to start with is corporate financial planning and analysis. So basically, those are the people who think about the finances for the company. So, every company has to make money some way, and they're going to have costs associated with making that money. And so the financial planning and analysis team not only thinks about, how much money are you making, but also how much money do you expect to make now and in the future, and are you on track to do that? So they're kind of somewhat similar to an accountant in that they're keeping track of the company's finances, but they have an extra layer because they're thinking about a planning aspect, like how much money do we think we'll spend next year and how much money do we think we'll make? And then let's make sure we're making the right decisions as a company to keep doing that. So an extension of that is strategy and business development. You definitely have to think about the finances of the company, but you're also going to be thinking about choices you can make to make the company money. So business development basically means what are new revenue streams or ways of making money that the company can find. So for example, I don't know how many of you guys watch HBO, but maybe you're familiar with the fact that HBO isn't just on TV anymore. You can now subscribe to it through just a digital platform, through your Apple phone or some other platform. And so when I started at HBO, we were working on that digital product. And so we were making decisions about, what do we want the product to look like? Do we want it to be sold through Apple or through Amazon? Do we want to, collect people's credit card information ourselves? Those kinds of decisions about how we're going to keep attracting new business for the company. And we also thought about things like early on, we had a partnership with Spotify, where if you bought a Spotify subscription, you could, also tack on the HBO Now subscription too. So we were thinking about different kind of partnership opportunities and stuff like that so that the company could continue making money. You guys were familiar with those ads. Yeah, that was a big push when the platform first launched. So strategy can mean anything like working on a product like that to keep building out sales, or it can mean things like doing an annual analysis of what the HBO's international business looks like, and is the way that we're currently doing business in Europe the way we want to continue doing business there, or do we want to think about new types of partnerships or new ways of getting our content out in a different region? So hopefully that answers the question, but I'm happy to answer more if you have more specific questions.
Yeah, that's great response. Thank you so much. And the second question that we had for you is, what are your specific responsibilities on a typical day?
Yeah, it varies a lot more in strategy, I would say, but from a skills perspective, one of the most common tools I used was Excel. So in all the jobs I've had, it's been a lot of numbers and thinking about like I said, where is money coming from and where is money going? So a lot of that is tracked within Excel and similar platforms. So like on a typical day as a manager in corporate financial planning and analysis, I'll just call FP&A for short from now on. I could be analyzing the budget or the future expectations of one of NBC's businesses, say like MSNBC, and looking at the revenue and costs that they expect to have for the following year, and then seeing how they're tracking up until that point for the current period, and just comparing those numbers. And then if the numbers are not the same, thinking about why they might not be the same, and maybe making some phone calls to people at those businesses to ask, oh, it looks like you're spending a lot more on marketing this month. What's happening with that? Why are you spending so much more? So it's a little bit of like individual analysis, and then a little bit of, communicating with other people to understand at a more kind of fundamental level what's happening with the business.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And the third question I had for you is, why do you choose to work at NBC, HBO, Evercore versus like other opportunities or other firms like Netflix or like Disney or Goldman Sachs?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess to start, I'll take a step back. I started my career out of undergrad at um, Comcast, which actually they're a TV distribution company. Some of you might get TV through them, but they also own NBC Universal. So I started there. Then I went to HBO for a couple years, and then I actually came back to NBC because I liked it so much, from my time working at Comcast. And then since I've been at business school, that's where I decided to intern with Evercore. I would say like the common theme throughout all of my choices was predominantly the people and the cultures of the places that I went. So like obviously there's a thread. I really like media. I really wanted to be in a finance space, but like you said, there are a lot of opportunities in different companies to work for. Um, they came to my school when I was in college. Comcast came and recruited on campus, and I met some of the sponsors of the program that I joined, and they seemed like really personable people. They seemed to invest a lot in their junior people, so that was something that was important to me at that time. So I joined the firm, and again, like really enjoyed the culture both on the Comcast side of the business and the NBC side of the business. And so I decided to stay. And so I used the same kind of barometer when I was thinking about, now that I'm back at business school, when I was thinking about which bank I wanted to go work at after business school. I met with a lot of banks, like 20 or so banks. And besides just trying to understand the different types of business and companies that they worked with, I really paid attention to both the junior and senior people and the culture at large. I would say like the most important advice I've gotten in my career is look for the person who's going to be managing you one or two levels up, because you want someone who's going to look out for you, because navigating the corporate world can be really difficult and kind of like scary sometimes. So you want to make sure you have people in your corner wherever you go, where they're going to make sure you're successful to a certain point. Obviously, you have to do the work yourself, but you want to make sure you're somewhere where it's not too cutthroat, where people feel like they're collaborative. Those were all important things for me, and that's kind of how I made my decision.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And another question that like directly connects with what you said is like, do you think attending a target school like we're in helped you in gaining these internships? And what are your experiences like getting an MBA from Wharton? Like this is kind of controversial about target schools and like this recruitment from like top companies at like these target schools.
Yeah, it's different. I would say it's definitely different undergrad to MBA. So for undergrad, I think the opportunities are a lot wider probably. Like Comcast, for example, that actually don't even, I went to Penn as an undergrad as well. Comcast actually doesn't even recruit at Penn as a target school anymore. They recruit at schools that have really robust business school undergrad business school programs, where a lot of students would be interested in general management and where the students might be interested in, non-New York, LA positions, because obviously Comcast has those positions, but they also have huge offices in places like Denver and Atlanta and Philadelphia and Chicago. So they want to make sure they're attracting people who want to live in those areas. So for undergrad, I think like the opportunities abound. I don't think you need to stress too much about being at a target school or not. I think the biggest difference is going to be at a target school, there might be people coming inbound to you from the different companies, but I think they're still expecting to get a lot of resumes and, interest shown from people who are at non-target schools. And then for business school, it's kind of a different setup. My experience at business school has been, for banking at least, being at Wharton really did help, just because there are so many alumni from Wharton in the banking sphere. But again, I don't think that necessarily, it's a different position coming out of MBA. So I don't think that's necessarily a target versus non-target thing for undergrads. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, thank you so much. And the last question we have for you is like, before we go into audience Q&A, is like, what is your like future career goals like after this, after graduating from Wharton?
Yeah, so I'm returning to Evercore for a full-time position in banking, and we'll kind of go from there over the next few years, hopefully stay there for a while. I don't know how much you guys know about banking, but it comes in different flavors. So what I'll be doing is mergers and acquisitions. You basically work with companies who are going to be involved in any sort of merger or acquisition, and you advise them on kind of how they should go about it and what strategies they should utilize. So that's what I'll be doing. And I don't know exactly what industry I'll be focused on yet, but obviously maybe media is an option, maybe something in that realm. But that's what I'll be doing next, and hoping to stay there for the foreseeable future.
Great, thank you so much. And we have like some questions in the chat, so if you want to answer these, definitely do, and I'll stop sharing.
Yeah. Great. So I see the first one from Lucy is, how did you get to the point you are right now, and what schools and majors did you take? Yeah, so I touched on the career path, and I'm happy to double click on anything that's interesting to people. Basically, I kind of decided I wanted to be in the corporate finance world from college, and so I stayed within that. Both FP&A and strategy both kind of fall under that umbrella, where they're all roles that kind of report into the CFO or chief financial officer of a company. And obviously now I'm pivoting a little more to be in the advisory world doing banking. But when I was an undergrad, like I said, I went to Penn, and I wasn't in Wharton. I was in their College of Arts and Sciences, which is a liberal arts degree. And I chose to study economics as my major, and sociology was my minor. So obviously economics, not exactly a business degree, but still very like math heavy, and thinking about kind of business concepts, which is why it made sense to go into corporate finance. And feel free to stop me and like ask any follow-ups if I don't answer exactly what you want me to. From Christopher, what is the process like when forming a business partnership with another company like HBO did with Spotify? Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, a lot of the work we did was thinking about the partnership and how it would look and how it would be mapped out. We were less on the like negotiation side. But for us, we would think about things like, okay, if we were to offer 1 month free with a Spotify membership, how much would that cost the company? Like, and how many new subscribers do we think we could get to the platform by doing that? And then more importantly, like if you're offering a free trial month, do we think a lot of the people who are going to sign up for Spotify and HBO will keep signing up for HBO, or will they just try it for a month and decide they hate it? So like it was really thinking about what kind of partnerships would get HBO the most long-term traction. So where could we find good synergies between another company where it would be a lot of the same subscribers who'd be interested in both products. So again, it was like a lot of math and a lot of Excel of just modeling out different scenarios of, okay, if we think the Spotify platform will get us 1 million new subscribers, how much money is that? And then if only 500,000 of them exist after 6 months, how much money is that? And so on and so forth. And then after that, you kind of think of the terms you want and how many months you want to offer free and all that kind of stuff. And then we have a different team that goes out to Spotify and talks to them about, okay, here's what we want to do for the packaging. Like, if there's costs associated with this, here's how we think we should share them. And then you go through a negotiation process to get to kind of the final partnership contract. Sahar says, how did you know that business was your choice to pursue? I don't think I have a very good answer to this. I was really interested in, like I said, media, and I'm not a very creative person. I know that about myself. So I knew that the avenue that would get me in would be something more in the math and business side of things. And so corporate finance just really made sense. And then once I was kind of in that world, I kind of got the seed in my head that going back for a business degree would make sense. It's definitely not a requirement to be in the business world, but I would say a lot of roles do lend themselves to having a business degree. So a lot of CFOs, a lot of CFOs end up having MBAs, but again, it's not like a requirement. It's just something that I looked around at. A lot of the people at the companies that I worked at, a lot of the people in senior positions had it, so I thought it was a good idea to continue pursuing. I bet you guys are way more creative than me, but I appreciate you making me feel better. Okay, let's see. Okay, looking back, would investment banking be the best major to study for your career like FP&A? If not, which would you recommend? So investment banking is the career that I'm going to go into next. I would say I studied economics, which was a really good liberal arts degree to get for FP&A because I mean, you have a lot of required math and statistics courses that go with an economics degree, and those are just good skills. You might get exposure to Excel, you'll just have exposure to working with numbers. So that's super helpful. If you have the opportunity to go for an undergrad business degree, that was definitely a common theme among a lot of my peers at Comcast and even at HBO. A lot of them had gone to study either accounting or finance as undergrads. And so that was obviously super applicable to the job because you do work a lot with like understanding things like a balance sheet or an income statement and stuff like that. But I think in general, FP&A requires people, like I was saying, you not only work with the numbers, but you also have to think about analytically why the numbers are the way they are. So really any liberal arts degree should prepare you for that. All colleges are going to teach you how to think analytically, and like that's the most important tool you can have, honestly, for any job, not just FP&A. So I wouldn't stress too much about picking a major that if you should pick a major you like over one you don't, because most of them will prepare you for a career in FP&A or something slightly similar. What are some other ways to get into the business development world, such as internships? That's a good question. I think it depends on industry. So for the media industry in general, they tend to look for people who have a strong interest in media. So, demonstrating by doing an unpaid internship with someone for summer or just talking about products that you like to work with or things that you like to watch, showing that you have a passion for the industry is really helpful for media. That's not necessarily true for other industries. I would say just being able to really demonstrate why you're interested in a business development internship. I'd say startups are probably a really good place to look because they're probably looking for a lot of people. They just need hands at a certain point. They're all so new, and business development is directly related to any startup because any startup is trying to make money and trying to figure out how they're going to make money and who they need to work with to make money and all that kind of stuff. So if you can kind of reach out to people who might be in the startup world, I would say it's not something I think you should stress about as in high school, but starting in college, you might be able to use the alumni network, whatever college you go to kind of reach out to people um, and find companies that seem interesting to you, and hopefully they have some sort of role in business development that you could get a foot in with. How did you navigate the different areas of business? I'd say like the fundamental tools that you use across businesses are kind of consistent. So like I said, a lot of it is being able to analyze numbers using whatever tools, whether it's Excel or whatever other tools the company may have, but being able to think about, looking at patterns of numbers, for example, and if a company or one of our TV networks, let's say broadcast NBC, say they continued to make $100 every year for like 5 years in a row, and suddenly they only make $50. And so being able to notice that that's kind of an irregularity and ask the right questions of why is that happening? How do we, address it and make it better? Those kinds of things are important. And then being able to communicate to get those answers is really important. So being able to build relationships across different parts of the business has always been a huge part of being successful. You want to make sure you have people you can lean on to ask questions and also to get information out of, and they can also help you navigate different areas of business when you're not as familiar with them. So I would say like communication and analytical skills have been the most helpful when trying to navigate different parts of business. Because ultimately you can kind of figure out what each business does pretty quickly if you ask the right questions. So it's really about having the people in your corner. I just scrolled down too far. What classes would you recommend taking for students in high school that are looking into the general areas of business? I don't know if there's anything specific in high school. I would say having like a strong math foundation is super helpful, and just being familiar with numbers, so that to the extent that you can take either math or science courses that are interesting to you, that's always good for staying sharp on that. I'm trying to remember like what my high school didn't really offer anything that exciting outside of like different kinds of English and history. But I think just staying engaged, like all school, high school and college, is going to teach you skills about being analytical. So whether it's something, it seems kind of unrelated, like writing a paper about a novel you're reading in your English class, like that stuff actually does matter, because it helps you think about why things are written the way they are, or what messages are trying to get across. And like those skills actually do come into play in the business world. So I wouldn't just write those off as like silly exercises. I think they're actually pretty useful. And having, being able to communicate on the phone is really important in the business world, but also being able to communicate in writing is really important. So to the extent that you can kind of practice those skills, whether it's in AP English or English Lit, or even your history class when you're analyzing and writing a long paper, I think those are all going to be helpful for you guys in the long run. Any online courses I should take that are specialized in business? I don't know about this one. I don't have an answer for this one. I think you're gonna learn I think you'll learn a lot in college, but if there's classes for everything online now. So if there's certain industries that are interesting to you, like if the media or business of media really is interesting, I would say find a course on that, so you can just start to get smart on, and it doesn't have to be media, any business, any industry. How does this industry, how do people make money in it, and how do they spend money? Understanding those types of things are the first step of understanding any type of industry. So if you can find a course like that about something that interests you, then like when you read articles about that industry, then you'll have a little bit more knowledge about what they're talking about, and it'll like help you build that passion of whatever you want to do long term. Do you think economics is a degree that allows for a career in finance, or do you think finance or business would be best? I think economics is a really strong degree. So I would say, and it just depends on whether you end up going to a liberal arts college or a business college. Both would be great. I would say at Wharton MBA now, where I guess you could say the sample size is a lot of people interested in business and careers in finance. Most of the people in my class, I would say a very, very large percentage, were either economics undergrads or business undergrads, probably within accounting or finance. So I don't think one is, one might be slightly more applicable directly to jobs you could have in finance, but to be honest, they're going to give you training on the job no matter what. So I think like the general skills and the general way of thinking that you get from either degree will be helpful. Would you recommend a business major jobs to people who aren't the brightest at math? Definitely. First of all, don't discount your skills, don't discount yourself. There's, all types of thinkers are necessary in the business world and for business jobs. And so I think it definitely is helpful to be able to work with numbers and like recognize how to analyze numbers, but that doesn't necessarily mean like doing calculus. It means, understanding, being able to maybe do like a couple quick additions or some multiplication. It's really not complicated. It's just being familiar with numbers. So like, even if it's not your favorite thing to work with in math, I would say keep plugging at it. You don't have to get super advanced. You just want to develop a level of comfort, because most decisions in the business world are going to be based on, whether something makes money or how much it costs and that kind of stuff. So you don't need to be an expert on crunching those numbers, but you want to be able to look at them and understand and feel like okay at a decent pace, if that makes sense. So is business more conceptual in comparison to finance? Is it better to major in finance if you'd like to do investment banking or equity research? So business will likely be the umbrella. So like you'll get a BS, a bachelor's of science, I think, in business, and then the concentration would be finance or accounting or marketing or something like that that falls within the business umbrella. So majoring in finance definitely would make a lot of sense if you were going into investment banking or equity research, because you'll probably have to take a lot of classes related to both accounting, but also understanding the fundamentals of finance, like, how to model out certain things and certain statements that a company would be looking at. What has been the best part of your MBA journey till now, and how has COVID impacted this experience as well? So the best part so far has definitely been the people that I've met. Business school is a huge part of it, is kind of building a community. And I've gotten to meet a lot of cool people who are in my year at Wharton. So that's definitely the best. And I'm laughing because COVID has definitely impacted our experience a lot. We've been virtual since April of last year, as I'm sure many of you have been. And we're back to kind of half in person, half virtual, but it's all dependent on who your professors are. And I happen to have no classes that are in person. So it's just made it a lot harder to meet people, and you can't meet your professors in person. Travel is a lot more limited, which is usually a huge part of business school, is kind of getting to meet a lot of international students and hopefully getting to go to their hometowns and see different countries through their eyes, and have them show you their worlds. But we obviously can't really do that safely right now. So it's definitely impacted the experience, but I would say it's still been a good experience overall. Okay, interested in computer science and finance. What would you say is the difference between them in terms of job prospects? I'm not super familiar with computer science in general, but I would think they definitely will take different paths. A computer science degree is probably going to lend itself a little bit more to like more of a tech role, and that could be in the finance world. There's a lot of roles that do require computer science within finance, things like um, analyzing investment opportunities, but based on data, those kinds of roles. But finance will be based more on like fundamental finance concepts rather than data or things like that, or like analyzing large swaths of data. So I would say computer science, you're probably going to be more in the tech world, and finance, you could either be in corporate strategy, corporate finance, investment banking, any of those types of flavors of finance. What are your thoughts on the recent crypto hype? I am admittedly not that well educated on the crypto stuff. I can't believe that it's still going up. Every time it keeps going up, I'm shocked. But I'm definitely not the right person to ask about the hype. I think it's definitely interesting to see. It's interesting for us to have been alive when like a whole new money supply was created, and we're going to get to see governments start to regulate something that's completely new and was built from scratch. So I think that's really interesting. But I don't know enough about fundamentals of crypto to have an opinion on how high it's going to go, or if it will suddenly bottom out or anything like that. Do you feel like in the long run, computers or AI will be able to become FP&A or business strategists, or is there a level of irreplaceable human creativity that someone in FP&A has? That's a good question. And it's something we definitely talked about here and there, because a lot of the processes that we would work on implementing were like to automate, say like pulling how much money a certain network makes for a month. We were working on making that even more automated, or making like being able to predict how much they would make in the next year even more automated. So I think there is a push to do a lot more stuff using AI, but at the same time, hopefully for my job and anyone else who wants to be in the industry, I think there is still a level of like oversight that needs to happen. And maybe the difference is, instead of like 5 people on a team, you do more automated stuff and only have 4 people on the team. But I think you still need humans for that analysis portion, for when, because things just happen that are irregular sometimes, and it's hard to keep track of. Sometimes things happen out of the blue, and I'm not well versed in AI to be able to say AI would be able to track those and analyze them still, but I think having that human oversight will continue to be important. Not only because a lot of these things are communication and relationship based, but also, like I was saying, because sometimes you just can't, like something that happens has never happened before, and so I don't know how a computer would be able to predict or analyze that. But again, I'm not that well versed in AI, so maybe I'm wrong. What are your thoughts on management consulting, and did you ever consider it as a career choice? I think it's an awesome career choice. I didn't consider it personally, but I think it's an excellent career. So a management consultant at the out of undergrad level will basically be doing a lot of, depending on what type of consulting you are and what you focus on, he'll probably be doing a lot of the same work that someone in corporate strategy or business development or even corporate FP&A is doing. You're just doing it for not just one company, you're doing it for many different companies. So it's a really good way to see different companies and how they work, but use the same skill sets that, like I was saying, Excel and analysis and communication, all of those are really important. So you would get to you get to see all that on kind of a broader level, which is great. And if you really like to travel, a lot of consultants travel as well. For me, that wasn't my preference, but if you want to see a huge part of the country or even the world, being a management consultant can kind of facilitate doing that, because the way it usually works is you get staffed on with a company or on a project that will go like 3 to 6 months. And so you could be, if you were based out of New York, you could get staffed on a project that was in Boston for 3 to 6 months. So then you're taking the train or flying to Boston once a week to go meet with your client and do the work at their site. So it's just, and after 6 months, you could go to a different city. So it's a cool way to see the world. It's also a good like boot camp in, doing a lot of PowerPoint and Excel and analytical work, and having to do it on a time crunch for a client. So it really has to be good work product. So I think you learn a lot of skills, and you learn a lot of professional skills really quickly. So highly recommend it. I just didn't consider it for myself. I think we're at the last question, but have you ever taken a class under Adam Grant? I actually was lucky enough to, he taught my first class at Wharton MBA. For those of you who don't know Adam Grant, he's written many books. He's kind of a thought leader in managing people and understanding how people work, especially in the context of business. And he has a podcast. Like I said, he's written books. He's very active on Twitter. So really cool guy. Highly recommend you check him out online. And yes, I did have him, and he was super cool. He, has a really great memory. So he memorized where everyone worked before school and what they were doing and who they worked for and everything, which is super cool. And he was really great about asking, what our experiences were like at school or before school at our different jobs. But yeah, he's an awesome guy, and I was lucky to take his class.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for answering all our questions.
Of course, this is so much fun. Thank you guys. Sorry, my headphones keep falling out. Thank you guys for having me. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that you may have, or I wish you all the best of luck. This is so great that you're doing this in high school. I wish you the best of luck in college and beyond, and definitely keep in touch.
Yeah, all right. Okay, so now we're gonna do like a camera time. So if everyone could turn on your cameras, and we're just gonna like take a photo on Zoom. So I'll give it like 5 seconds. Hopefully people turn on the cameras. 5,